Hello and welcome along. So today we're going to talk about Erebus, the first heretic, first chaplain of the Word Bearers, and in his own mind, the Hand of Destiny, which says a lot about how he pictures himself. So Erebus, he is probably one of the most famous non-Primarch characters of the Horus Heresy period. He is, and rightly so, because in fact he's probably the most influential character in the series, even including Primarchs. And that's quite a statement, I think, but it's true. I think it's true. He he is literally the first heretic. So he is the man responsible for starting it all off. Basically, if you don't, obviously the ruinous powers, chaos gods, they started it, but as a morph, he's the one that takes their message, their plan to the reality. So Erebus, obviously, there are people in the universe of the 40k world that are worshipping chaos throughout history. Erebus isn't technically the first person to worship chaos, but he's the first Astarte to worship chaos. So the first person in a position of power that would allow chaos to use him to bring their plan to fruition. So there are people in various isolated worlds that are worshipping chaos, some knowingly, some unknowingly, sort of tribal societies, and some cultists on more developed worlds that are doing this, but they don't really know what they're doing on what they're worshipping. Whereas Erebus much more in the know about what he's doing and why he's doing it, and has a pretty good idea of the general plan of what chaos is trying to achieve. So he's probably one of their most knowing servants. So he's very important to chaos and to their plan. Without him, you can't really see the corruption of the Primarchs and the legions ever happening, and then the heresy can't happen. So he's key to that plan, and he's in it from the very beginning. So he, long before the heresy, he is where he becomes aware of the fact that he's always been guided by the chaos god. As a child, he was always what you could call a sociopath. Essentially, he really got a thrill and a lot of enjoyment, of purpose out of life, of just doing pretty bad things. He kind of reveled in the thrill of doing bad things. His society considered evil. He would do those things just for the thrill of it. And he would do things, stereotypical things of a sociopath or a psychopath, like torturing animals, that kind of thing. Trying manipulating people, getting people into trouble for things they hadn't done. These are the kind of things he got his purpose from. And then as he grew up, he just continued to do them. But at some point he realized as a child he was doing that because he was guided by the ruinous powers, who at that time on his home world of Colchis, the religion of the planet was the worship of chaos, but they didn't know that. They called it the Covenant. And they did worship gods of the Covenant, but they didn't understand fully what they were. And so there wasn't like the world was kind of like a demon world or a chaos world where it's all very obvious that of all of the more extreme aspects of the chaos gods are present. There it was much more under the radar. It wasn't as clear to the general population what they were really doing. But he has this sort of realization when he looks in the mirror and sees his face split into four parts, that suddenly he's like aware of the chaos gods and that he's basically been guided by them. So he is much more conscious of what's going on than anybody else. So as a child, after this realization, he basically keeps himself hidden. He never really tries to go against the grain. He always is very tactical about the way he operates. So, for example, when he was getting into a lot of trouble and he was being compared to a good boy in his village who was very studious and respected by the adults, he murders him and replaces him, essentially, basically steals his identity, goes off to the Covenant and becomes an acolyte of the Covenant. So basically he's learning to be a priest. And then later Lorgard takes over the planet and he sort of defeats the Covenant and replaces them with his own religion, which is more of essentially a worship of a single god. He has this vague idea about the Emperor coming and what the Emperor represents, but he doesn't know of the Emperor exactly yet. So he has this idea, some sort of psychic connection to the Emperor, that he has an idea of what the Emperor wants to do, but he doesn't exactly know the details. He predicts the coming of this new god who it actually turns out to be the Emperor, who will like wipe away the old gods and so on. So he kind of gets it partly right, but in his mind, it's a one new god replacing the old gods. So he builds this faith around the coming of this new god. So at this time, Erebus switches sides. Basically, he just he goes into hiding, then comes sort of re-emerges, reinvents himself, and joins the winning side, and then becomes an acolyte of this new faith. Now, then, of course, the next thing that will happen on the planet, the main next big event, is the Emperor does turn up. Now, this him arriving kind of fulfills Logos' prophecies of this new god arriving. So, although the Emperor doesn't want to be considered a god, and he kind of explains this to Lorgar, and so Lorgar isn't allowed to worship him. Lorgar does go into Emperor worship, but in the background, there's a fair few people still worshipping the old gods, the Covenant gods. One of which is Erebus, obviously, but also Lorgar's adopted father, Corphoron. And there's quite a few like hidden cults and so on going on still in the background that still worship the old gods. Again, most of them not really having real knowledge of what they're worshipping, but Erebus does have that knowledge, and he keeps it secret. So he basically goes under the radar. He becomes an Astarte, so he gets taken in the first intake of recruits on Colchis, so into what were then the Imperial Herald, and then obviously would later become the Word Bearers. He kind of basically maneuvers his way up through the Legion ranks, and eventually he gets to the point, first chaplain. So the Wordbearers have the unique position of chaplain at this time, which is kind of a spiritual leader, which is a bit awkward because obviously they're not supposed to have any spiritual beliefs, but they do have these chaplains who are kind of responsible for discipline and the well-being of the thoughts, the minds of the Astartes in their care. But it's a very kind of, they're walking a very narrow tightrope between actual religious practice as kind of symbolism of religion. So they're not. And of course, eventually this will actually become outright religious belief, and they'll be worshipping the Emperor as a god, which leads to the Emperor intervening. It takes him quite a while to do this, but eventually he's like, no, Lorgar, you've done this too much. I'm going to intervene, and he humiliates Lorgar on the planet of Kerr. So basically, Lorgar's built this city he calls the Perfect City, Monarchia, and the Emperor turns up with Guilliman and the Ultramarines, and they basically force the Wordbearers to watch this city get destroyed, and they for all the people that are living there as well. So, and this obviously is a pretty traumatic event in Lorgar's story, and is the main reason why he becomes very vulnerable to Erebus's techniques of persuasion. And so once this is over, basically Lorgar is broken. He doesn't have any purpose. He doesn't know what's going on. Erebus has been waiting for this moment. So Erebus has never worshipped the Emperor, really. He's always been in the background, planning, waiting for the right moment to persuade Lorgar to go back to the old gods. And Corphoron, although he's never given up on the old gods, he was basically playing along with Lorgar. He was just doing what he basically openly says to Lorgar, that I will follow what you say, but I still, in my heart, I still believe in the old gods. And Lorgar was okay with that. But once this happens, Erebus then goes to Corphoron, uses him as an ally to help persuade Lorgar that, okay, the Emperor's pushed you away. He's not going to let you worship him. So the Emperor doesn't want you. You need to find someone that does want you, someone that will return this devotion that you've given to him, someone that is worthy of your belief, your faith. And that's when he uses this moment to take Lorgar over to the worship of chaos. So Erebus, straight away, Erebus has made a huge influence there, that he persuades the first Primarch to. Now, once he's got Lorgar's patronage, he can, in actually worship of chaos, he can then corrupt the entire legion. So the Wordbearer Legion rapidly becomes a chaos worshipping legion. Now, this is hidden, and they keep it quite hidden so that no one, people that come and visit them occasionally, or they work with them, they're allies, for campaigns and stuff, don't know this is going on. So they keep it hidden. It's not open chaos worship, but it is there. And they spread this amongst the Legion more and more. And then eventually they get the opportunity to start spreading it amongst the other legions. So they basically encourage the creation of warrior lodges. So they're kind of like secret societies within the legions, where on the surface of it is essentially for people to be able to interact with each other without the concerns of the legion's hierarchy, the rank structure, etc. So just warrior to warrior, they can just hang out and talk and stuff, and it's supposed to be good for them. And you can see some benefits to this, and that so it spreads amongst the legions. But really, this is Erebus's plan to spread the corruption of chaos amongst the legions, and it works really well. And a lot of the people that eventually do fall in the various legions do so because they were part of these warrior lodges where this began in each legion. He also gets an opportunity with the help of Malcador, who basically to introduce chaplains across all the legions. Now, so basically, with the outlawing of psykers in the legions, so the librarians have to be turned back to normal warriors. They have to go and fight as normal warriors, the study of psychic powers has to be completely eliminated in the legions. Malcador is not. He's basically suspicious that some of the legions aren't going to follow this instruction from the emperor, so he decides to spread, to basically take the idea of chaplains from Lorgar's wordbearers and put them in the other legions. So, and you think, well, these guys will be, they're the most disciplined, most loyal to their primarchs and to the emperor. They will enforce this edict of Nicaea, which is outlawing the use of psykers in the legions. An odd idea if you think about it, because literally Malcador knows pretty much everything that's happened in the Imperium, second only to the Emperor. Yet he obviously must know about Lorgar's problem with worshipping the Emperor and then being the Legion being disciplined for this. And chaplains are obviously a very religious symbol. I mean, it's in the name. So it's odd that he would that's a really good idea. We should put those chaplains to work across all the legions. They'll definitely keep things going in the right direction, won't they? But anyway, he does. Maybe it's because he's a strange guy, Malcador. I should do a separate video on him. But anyway, he decides to do this. But this is all basically Erebus's plan. He wants psykers to be eliminated from legions because that's helpful, because they're very effective against chaos. So that's what part of Chaos' plan is, and it also sows division. So it makes it easier to the Thousand Sons, for example, to be eliminated as a threat. It just weakens the legions in general, causes more division amongst the primarchs and the legions in general. And then again, this is Erebus. So Erebus is manipulating people in the background. He's pulling all the strings. He is the arch puppet master of the 40k universe. He's actually incredibly skillful and intelligent, and a very capable strategist. So he's outwitting Malcador, who's a very wise and powerful individual. He's even, in many ways, you could say he's somehow managing to stay under the radar of the Emperor, even though he's doing some pretty big momentous things. He does it in a way that never draws attention to himself. He is, and as the heresy develops, he is the one that really ultimately brings Horus into chaos influence. He pulls all the strings. He creates a situation where Horus is mortally wounded and has to turn to the chaos powers to rescue him. Even then after that, he basically becomes Horus's most trusted advisor. He's constantly whispering in his ear, manipulating him, getting him to do what he wants. So, and he does this for quite a while, so very successfully, without Horus killing him. Because by now Horus is very unstable and is extremely prone to acts of violence when people piss him off. And Erebus really pisses people off a lot because he sails very close to the wind. He's always pushing people to their limits. But he knows just when to avoid, when to step back, when to say something else, just to keep himself in favour as this trusted advisor. So it really, in many ways, Erebus is like the personification of all of the world's manipulators. Journalists, politicians, the corrupt court advisor that you get in every fantasy film. He's all of those things put into one person. So he manipulates everything and gets everybody to do what he wants. He does come up with a couple of big problems. One of those is he does nearly die twice during the heresy period because he pushes the limits maybe slightly too far. So one is Khan the Betrayer, or eventually becomes Khan the Betrayer. It almost kills him when he finds out that Erebus has killed his friend Argol Tal. He eventually kills him by stabbing him in the back with a ritual knife. So this, and Khan is a big friend of Argol Tal, and so he basically is about to kill Erebus, and Erebus manages to just get out of the way and teleport off of the ship, so he gets away. But he would have died at that point. But then another time, he pushes his luck even further when he literally outright in front of other people tells Horus that he's caused the chaos attempt to corrupt the Blood Angels and Sanguinius to fail. But he literally tells him it's his fault in front of everybody, and obviously that's like about the worst thing you can possibly do is at this point is tell Horus he's done something wrong and he's made a mistake, and does it in a very disrespectful way. He literally just loses his temper and tells him he's caused this failure. And so Horus doesn't kill him, which is interesting. I can't actually remember. I don't think he escapes, but basically what he decides, instead of killing him, he just cuts his face off. He literally just flays his face with his own knife, which is actually a great scene, because I mean, any time Erebus gets some punishment, it's quite good. And the writers do this really well, I think, of building up the character of Erebus is this just despicable person that you just really, I don't think anyone can really like Erebus. He's a really great character to have in the series, of course, but to actually like him, I mean, he's like a character like, Game of Thrones. Think of Joffrey from Game of Thrones. A really truly despicable character, except that he's got brains, so he actually is good at what he does. He's like Littlefinger and Joffrey mixed together. Anyway, yes, so he does almost get killed again. So when he pisses Horus off, but he gets away with just having his face cut off. So yeah, that's the main story of Erebus and who he is, why he is like he is, what he's done. There we go. So Erebus, what do you think about him? Does anyone actually like Erebus? If you do like Erebus, it probably says something about you. Maybe you're not someone that other people should be around. But obviously, you have to admire him as a character, and also admire his ability to do the things he did to outmaneuver the people he did. They're incredible people, Malcador, Primarchs, even the Emperor in some senses, and survive all the way through the Heresy. But there you go. So thanks for watching. Like, subscribe, share. See you next time.